Hi, I'm Bill Hitchcock, and it is April 9th, 2020 when I'm recording this. It's a lesson on how to take a text file, something that you could generate from just about any sort of application, and then pull that into Microsoft Excel and start doing some analysis with it. So out on eLearn, we've got a text file. It's the Chapter 10 import file, JTerm enrollment, so it's some just classroom enrollments. And anyways, if you click on the file, it might try to just open this automatically in some other text editor, and we don't really want that. What we want to do is we want to right-click on that file and then choose Save the Link As, and then save that file. So, I mean, it kind of depends on what browser you happen to be working with, but I'm using Chrome, so if I just right-click on it, I can save the link as, and then I'm going to save this out in some directory. So for example, I can save this on my C drive, and I'll save it in the temp directory, and I'm just going to let it, the file name, whatever it's called, just leave that, and we're going to save it as a text file, and I'll click on save, and it's downloading that, and there I go. I've got this saved. So same thing, if you would have clicked on it, it might have gone down here. You can choose this, you can show it in a folder, you can try to open it. And if I open it, it happened to default into Notepad. Microsoft Notepad is just a real simple little text editor, and it works well. If you can't find Notepad, come down to your search button, type in Notepad, you'll find it on your Windows computer, it will work. So I've got this data file that I'm working with here, and I'm just going to choose File Save As. I want to double check, see where it saved it. It's on my C drive in temp. That looks fine. I'm going to rename this just to have kind of a backup copy, and I'll call it, Chapter 10, JTerm Enroll, or Enrollments. And before I pull this into Excel, I want to clean this file up a little bit because this one's kind of a mix of things here. If I try to pull this into Excel, this is going to dump it into a bunch of different cells, and I really can't do very much with it, but I want to make this look like a bunch of records. So it's tedious, but it works. Trust me, just do it. You got to cursor down a cell, hold your Shift key, and cursor down one, which will select that whole blank row and right next to it, and I'm going to hit delete, and notice how it shifted everything up because I want to keep these field names up at the top, and I also want to grab all these records. So now all this other stuff in between here, I don't need it, so I'm just going to highlight this, hit delete, cursor down a cell, go down a few, hit delete, cursor down one cell, hold Shift, not one too far, hit delete, and just keep doing this for all the records. And that's, like I say, it's going to start driving you crazy, but you know what? You'll be fine. You'll get it done. And it took me, I think, all of 3 minutes when I did this last time. Just to give you a heads up, when you get all the way down to the bottom, this last record here, when you hold your Shift key and cursor down and hit delete, you're still on that bottom line there. So what you need to do is hit backspace to go back up one last line. That's how we handle the last record. All right, so just be a little bit careful when you're doing that one. And I'll just show you the record before it just to see how all those pop up. All right, so I'm going to hit Control Home. Rather than making you watch me do that for the whole file, you've got to do it yourself. So I'm just going to save this. And to give you an idea about what it looks like when we're all done, I'm going to click on File Open and go to where I've got the file saved. Hopefully I can find that. And I've got this file here, and you can see I've got all the records and all that extra data that's kind of deleted out of there. All right. So I'm just going to take this file, save it that as, and I'll save it in the same location that I had the other file in on my C drive in my temp directory. and we'll just call this one Chapter 10 JTerm Enroll Clean. So that's what your file should look like when we're all done. All right, I can close this up. Now what I need to do is I need to go into Microsoft Excel and click File and Open and Browse and go to where I stored my file. So I choose my C drive, I stored it in the temp directory. And I've got this set at all files. If it's set at Excel files, you're only going to see that and you won't see your text file. But if you change this to all files, or if you want, there might even be an option, here's text files. It'll just display out your text files. And here was the one, the JTerm Enrollment Clean. I'll choose that, hit open. And it throws me into this thing called the Text Import Wizard. So we've got two different choices here. We can either do this as delimited. In other words, there's like a comma in between these files. That's what you might use for a CSV file, a comma separated values file. But in this case, I want to use a fixed width file as opposed to delimited. And I'm going to tell it which columns is which. Down a little farther, let's see, I want to start the import in row 1. That sounds good. I want to check my data has headers. That's the field names here. So I'll choose that. I'm going to go next. And then it's got all these lines that I can put in to determine where I want to split all this stuff up. So for the most part, it guesses pretty well. Certain things like, for instance, we've got L.ACC. If you really don't want the L dot there, you could just click in between there and you can separate those two things out. If you don't want to leave that arrow there, click on it twice, it removes the arrow. So I've got the department, the CAT number, or in other words, the course number, the section number, the title here. For the credits, notice this first one, accounting internship, is actually, you can take it for anywhere from 1 to 12 credits. And I'm just going to scroll down through all these records just to check to make sure I don't have a digit just to the left of this. Because if I did, I would just drag this out a little bit and give myself some extra space. All right, as I said, we've got this problem with these 1-12, and Excel, when you try to import that, it's going to assume that that's a date, and it'll give you some really weird results. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add an extra line in there to split out the first number, and there it's going to grab the 1, and then I want to do it right next to that dash, so I'm getting rid of the decimal point as well, but it'll be all right because we don't have half credit courses. So that takes me to 1 to 12. I'm just kind of scrolling back and forth through my data to look and see if I've got anything that seems kind of odd here. So all those extra spaces, they'll just be, it won't be a problem, it'll just grab in that number. For the time, I want to split the time apart. I don't want to have this dash in between the time because otherwise it reads that whole thing as just text. And I want to use these as times. So I'm going to put in some dashes here. Now, we run into a little bit of a problem. Because they put PM right after the time, Excel's not going to interpret that quite correctly. So what we could do is we could separate that out if we want. But then if you do that, if you have a time like 3 o'clock, it's going to think that that's 3 a.m. rather than 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So I'm just going to leave that off for now. So let's do that. Let's see here. The days, that looks all right. All of this, the rest of this is looking pretty good. Let's hit next. It says, do you want to do any formatting? No, I really don't need to do the formatting. I'll do that in Excel. Cross our fingers, hit finish, and there's all my data. So 10 minutes into it, it just took us that long to get this into a spreadsheet, but hey, it worked pretty well. So like all spreadsheets, first thing I want to do is save it, make sure I don't mess something up. So I'm going to choose Save As. You don't want to just hit Save, you want to do Save As. save it wherever you were saving the rest of the stuff. I'm going to save it in my temp directory. But this time, change the file type to an Excel workbook. You don't want to leave this as text, otherwise anything you do in Excel won't be accepted. So we've got our JTerm enrollment. I don't need the word clean there. I'm just going to call it JTerm enroll, chapter 10, JTerm enrollment, just to give you a slightly different file name. Hit save. Good. So that's step one. Step two, I want to keep track of these records in the original order. So I'm going to right click on column A, choose insert. I want the sequence number or the record number, however you want to call it. 1, 2, 3. Highlight those cells. Go to the Home tab, comma format, decrease the decimal, and then double click on the fill handle. And if I hit end and down, I find out I've got 49 records. It wasn't all that bad. That's why we're just doing January term enrollment. All right, let's highlight all these cells. So I'm going to hit Shift, End, and down. I want to cursor down a ways, and I'm just going to cursor across. I'm still holding Shift, and I'm just cursing over to the right. And I want several columns to the right. I guess I really didn't need to go that far, but it'll be fine. Change my font size to 8. So that shrinks that down. I want to take my field names, so I hit Control Home, Shift, End, and right. Go right a ways, and let's do bold, center, wrap text. Then I want to adjust the column widths and clean some of this stuff up. So I'm going to click on column A, hold my Shift key, start cursoring over to the right, all the way out to column S. Let go of the Shift, double click between any two of these columns, and we've got everything all lined up that way. Finally, I want to do the freeze panes. So I'm going to go to cell A2, click on View, Freeze Panes, and Freeze Panes. That way, if I hit end and down, I can still read those field names. So we've really got this pretty well set. I mean, we've got a lot of it done so far. Looks good. Let's save our work. So that way, if we have any other problems, we can always go back and kind of start from scratch again, and as we can do that. All right, some things that we want to do to help with the analysis. One is I've got these numbers in here for the maximum number of students allowed in the class, how many were used, if there was a wait list, and so on. So for this, the max and used, I'm going to hit Shift, End, and down. I want to format those. And use a comma format just to kind of clean that up a little bit. Now this is one of those, it's a little bit odd. For classes that are arranged, like internships, for example, there they say the max, it's 0, and yet there's 1 used. So in some ways, we can leave that there. And maybe what we do is we insert another column in here, and we say something like this, where we'll call it the new max, if you will. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to check and say if the current maximum is less than what's used. If that's true, then I want to use whatever is used. Otherwise, I want to just use whatever the maximum is. And we'll copy this down. So that way we take care of some of those things like global filmmaking, for example. It had 0 for max, but yet there's 9 people enrolled in the class. I want to be able to say, hey, this class is full, it's 100% full. All right, so you could do some calculations that way. Then let's add another calculation in. Let's have the percent capacity. So my percent capacity is equal to the used divided by the new max. And let's format that with a percent. So this one is at 100%. And we copy this down. and we can check to see if, some of our classes, for example, this one at 47%, that said they could handle up to 15 people, only 7 were enrolled. It's fine. We've got that. Here's one that was only 40% and so on. So, and not to say that, there's a problem with the class or anything. It's, sometimes people might set the cap fairly high and it really didn't need to be that high, for example. But, there's examples like that, and it's something we want to take a look at and ask the question, why might this have happened? All right, for the wait list, I'm just going to hold my shift key, hit my page down a few times, and I want to center that so that way the Y's just kind of stick out a little bit better if they're centered. Right, just indicating, yeah, there were people hoping to get into that class, but they weren't able to. The SIN number, the department, and so on, nothing really there that we need to do. The title, we don't have to do that. All right, for now, for the credits, what I want to do here on the credits is this first number, we're going to call that the minimum credits. And my field name is kind of messed up, so let's grab these 3 here and widen them all out a bit. So there's my minimum credits, and now I can readjust this. And then over here, I'm going to call this one the max credits that you could take it for. So in this case, my minimum credits is 1, this one's 12. Here I've got 0, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. We'll clean that up in a bit. In the middle here, we've got really nothing, so I don't even need that column. So I'm just going to right-click on column M and delete this one out. So for max credits, we've got that. Let's do another calculation to kind of figure out what we want to do with this. Let's actually, what might work well. Usually I like to calculate things, but every now and then, it's almost faster. Just sort and clean things up that way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my minimum credits, and I just want to sort this. Well, before I sort, I better save. All right, and then I'm going to go and sort by the minimum credits. So the smallest number I've got is 1. That looks fine. As I scroll down here, we've got 4. All those numbers look fine, nothing that I want to do with those. All right, let's do the same thing for the max credits now. Let's sort this. And I've got a bunch that are zeros. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the minimum credits and for all those that are 0, I'm just going to copy this and put it right on top of the other one. So that way the min is the same as the max. If you want to do an average credit or something, you could do that, to kind of figure out what we want to do with those credits. Because otherwise, the 0 credits doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So for most of the classes, you can tell they're all 3 credit classes. So we'll do that. All right, next we've got the times. All right, so this middle column here is just a dash. That one, if I go end and up, get back up to the top here, let me get all the way up to the top. I could just delete this column. So let's get rid of column O. Let's see for this one here, this is actually the start time. And this would be the end time. And before I do much formatting with them, I think what I want to do is I want to sort this out. So I'm going to choose sort this. So I've got 1 all the way down to we've got some arranged classes here. So they don't have any times at all. So I'm just going to make sure I've got that stuff deleted. All right, that looks fine, but everything else looks pretty good. So what I want to do with these times is I'm going to format, oh, hang on, not those cells. These cells here, I'm going to hit Shift and down to select these times, and I want to use there is a time format, but I don't want the seconds, so I'm going to choose more number formats. Go to time, and then format it with an AM and a PM. Hit OK. And everything looks pretty good except for this very first time. I somehow doubt that this class started at 1 in the morning. So that was one of those, because it was just one, the 1.00, it didn't have the AM PM. I'm just going to go in here, make an editorial decision, and choose 1 p.m. and we should be good there. Now notice over here, these look like they're just fine. But because there's not a space in between that PM, it really is just the text, and it's not interpreting it as a time. So what I'm going to do is, for this one, I'm going to sort this. So I've got 11 a.m. Those all look fine. But down here I've got a 1 p.m. I need to put a space. So I'm just going to click, put a space in there. That one looks all right. For 2 p.m., do the same thing there. For 3 p.m., do the same thing there. I realize it's a lot of tedious cleaning, but that's what data cleansing is all about. For 3 p.m., I can just copy that one and do it for those. Just be really careful when you do this so you don't accidentally corrupt your data. All right, so here's 3:30. I'm going to copy that down for the 3:30 ending classes. Let's see, we've got a bunch that end at 4 p.m. it looks like, so let's put in a space here. And I'll copy this down. And here we've got a couple that end at 5 it looks like, so we'll put another space in here. Copy that one, just for 1, I guess. Oh, come on, come on, come on. Oh no, I just got done talking about don't corrupt your data, and I just did. I tell you what, there's only one of them, so let's go in here and put a space right there. We can do that one, the 6 p.m. We've got that. Here's 12 p.m. I want a space. And I'm going to copy that one for all my 12 p.m.s. Let's see how many more. We've just got that one. And finally, here's one at 12:30 p.m. And we've got it done. All right, so that looks good. Hit Control Home and we can save this. Now what I want to do is I want to add in another column. So I've got my start time, my ending time. I'm going to insert a column here. And I want to know what's the elapsed time. And if I take the ending time and subtract off the beginning time, it tells me it's 2 a.m. Well, really it's 2 hours. It's 9 to 11, that's 2 hours. So if I format this with a different time format, I can choose this time format, and it shows me the 2 hours was the elapsed time. I copy this one down, and that's looking pretty good. Here's one that goes for 10 hours, 8 o'clock in the morning until 6 p.m. That was the one I think over in Europe is what they were doing on that one. All right, then finally down here I've got my arrange times. Those we can just delete out of there. We don't need that. All right, other things that I want to be able to do is I want to enhance being able to sort and filter some of this data. In other words, I want to find out what classes met on Mondays, which ones met on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. Problem is the dates are all kind of jumbled up in here together. So what I'll do is, again, let's do sort and filter. The arranged, we don't have to worry about those, but for these down here, most of them all go Monday through Friday. But as we get down towards the bottom, there's some, here's one that's just a Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Here's a Tuesday, Thursday. And finally a Tuesday, Wednesday class that we've got. And most likely they actually met some other times. We deleted that information. So this is their main meeting time. So let's come up to the top and I'll show you a trick that you can do. We can type in the days of our week. M, T for Tuesday, W, TH, Thursday, and then Friday. And what I want to do is I want to search these times to see, is there an M in there? Is there a T in there? Is there a W? Is there a TH? Is there an F? And find and see if that is true or if it's not true, and so on. So what you can do is say equals if parenthesis. I want to find the text. So I can use the find function. And I want to find this text up here, the letter M, for example. And I always want to use that row, so I'll hit function F4 once, twice, type in a comma. Within the text is over here in that date and time. So if it does find that, what I want to return is this letter in cell U1. If it doesn't find it, I just want to put in a null string, so 2 quotes and a parenthesis. Hit enter, and I've got too many arguments for this function. Oops. Let's see, we've got if find. I forgot to put a parenthesis at the end of that, so let's put in after the Q7, we put in a parenthesis there. If it finds it, return the letter M, otherwise give me a null string. So here I get the letter M that says, yeah, this meets on a Monday. Or you could, instead of referencing that cell, you could make it the letter Y, for example, right? So if I copy this down, it should find all those dates that did indeed have a letter M there. And for these last couple, apparently it didn't find the letter M, so it's just given me a value on it, and we can try doing some other tricks to find out, basically we can delete those cells and just put in the blanks that way. All right, so I've got that done. Let's see if we can copy that formula over. So now I'm going to copy it over to here, and it's not working on the T. All right. The reason it didn't work on the T is where I've got the if $1, this M, then I check if it's in Q7. But when I copy to the right, I always want to use column Q. So if I copy that, and I'm going to copy this across and down for all my cells, hit enter, and I've just about got it. I've got those days where it seems like it's met everything. So what I want to do with it is I'm going to take these, copy them, shift N down, copy that, and then I actually don't want that formula anymore. So I'm going to choose paste values and just paste the actual text in there so nothing changes on me. So now let's try sorting this out and see what happens. Let's sort for my M's and just make sure that, yeah, that's right. It looks like all these classes are meeting on a Monday except for these couple down here. So let's take those values and delete them. We don't need it. I don't need this one. I'll delete that. I'll delete this one. I'll delete here. I'll delete here. Delete this. Delete this. And what's nice about all this, I don't know, maybe, I think it's kind of nice. I'm going to narrow these columns up a little bit. Probably not quite that far. And when I'm ready to do some analysis on this, I want to find out equals count, parenthesis, count up how many classes I had. 49 of them. If I copy, if I come over here for my Monday classes, I'm going to use equals count A and go all the way up here. Not quite all the way up to the top, because if I include that field name up there, it's going to count that one too. So I don't want it on that one. But it looks like 49 of the, or 42 of the 49 classes met on Mondays. Let's copy this across. And we can see which of those classes, it looks like Tuesday and Wednesday were the big winners. Here's one, Thursday was 42 and so on. We had that Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So we've got some of those dates in there just to kind of give you an idea about when classes are meeting and so on. Coming across here, the start time and the ending time totally net up doesn't really help very much, but what we might do is we might do an average function on that. And let's see if we can find out what the average start time was. And if I use my format painter, and paste that here. On average, they're starting at 9:12 a.m. On average, they end at 1:37 p.m. We could do a min and a max. Find out who was the earliest start. And then I'll do the max, and then I'll format it. And let's choose my format painter. And format paint these numbers here. All right, so the earliest class was 8 o'clock. Latest one to start was at 1. Earliest class end is at 11 a.m. The latest one was 6 a.m. All of that kind of stuff is good information. Here for the elapsed time, we can put that in here, but again, just because of formatting differences, so I'm going to choose this format, choose my format painter here, and do the format of those numbers to find out. On average, it looks like 4 1/4 hours. The shortest class looks like it was 2 hours for some reason. The longest class was 10 hours. Again, don't get all upset and say, wow, somebody had to put in 10 hours a day, somebody else only had 2 hours. Chances are we lost some of the data when we deleted off some of the extra parts of those records. But again, it's all about kind of, hey, where's the red flags? Let's dig into it, find out what the real answer is, and then we can explore some of this. Might want to get the max used and capacity and do those kind of computations. You can do that. We can save this. We can, do some other counts. But the important part is really working with the text, importing the data. You've done the analysis on other things. Clean this one up a little bit if you like to. Find out what some of the key findings are. I hope that this helped you out and you'll get this done soon.